The Indian Express, 8th of March 2023, how do China's neighbors feel about Beijing's intentions to expand its military? Invoking escalating security threats from abroad, outgoing Premier Li Keqiang declared an increase in the country's military spending at the opening of China's rubber-stamp parliament on Sunday. Beijing has increased its projected military spending by 7.2% to 1.55 trillion yuan, $225 billion, 213 billion euros, the fastest growth rate since 2019. The military needs to dedicate greater energy to training under combat conditions and strengthen military work in all directions and domains, Li said. China spends far less on defense than the United States, which has budgeted more than $800 billion for its military this year. Western analysts contend that Beijing significantly exceeds the amounts formally reported in its military budget. Also, the US defends the globe. China wants to rule the entire globe. Drew Thompson, a China expert at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy at the National University of Singapore, stated that China had started a long-term, comprehensive military modernization and expansion effort in 2000. I believe that the PLA's most recent budget increase is consistent with what we have seen over the last 22 years. According to Zhu Yunsu, an analyst at Taiwan's Institute for National Defense and Security Research, Chinese defense spending plans show Beijing's intention to transition from being a land power to a naval power. He stated that the first phase of Beijing's military buildup would encompass the Taiwan Strait, the South China Sea, and the East China Sea. Then, he continued, China will focus on enlarging to the second island chain, where it hopes to impact the rebalancing of power. The islands of Micronesia and the Japanese archipelago that extend to Guam make up the second island group. Increased view of China as a threat globally. The increase in defense spending coincides with escalating Indo-Pacific geopolitical tensions. Several nations, including the Philippines, South Korea, and Japan, have grown more cautious of Beijing's expanding assertiveness and influence in the area. They have boosted military spending and concentrated on improving their defense readiness due to their assessments of a greater danger to the regional security environment. For instance, Japan declared record military spending for the upcoming year of 6.82 trillion yen, $51.7 billion, 49 billion euros, up about 26% from the year before. The government of Prime Minister Fumio Kishida also revealed the most significant military buildup in the country since World War II, signaling a radical break from 7 decades of pacifism. Tokyo's military reform plan calls for doubling defense expenditure to 2% of GDP and purchasing missiles with a 1,000 kilometers range. When China is the real adversary, it is challenging to maintain a balance between US and Chinese relations. The military might of China is a concern for South Korea, but North Korea remains Seoul's most urgent and pressing security threat. The Chinese puppet state of Pyongyang has recently significantly increased its hostile behavior, launching a record number of missiles in 2017. According to Ryo Hinata Yamaguchi, a project assistant professor at the Research Center for Advanced Science and Technology at the University of Tokyo, South Korea has to be more sensitive about the threat posed by China because of the situation on the Korean peninsula, where China could intervene on the north side in the event of a contingency. But Seoul is also reluctant to get involved in great power competition between Beijing and Washington. Deep security ties exist between South Korea and the US, but China is the country's largest trade partner and greatest security threat. As a result, Seoul must travel a diplomatic tightrope to maintain good relations with both Washington and Beijing. Although the administration of President Yoon Suk-yeol has announced plans to boost military spending, most of the new hardware will be used to counter the threats presented by North Korea. Seoul is attempting to fortify its security ties to counter China. In exchange for improved defense relations, South Korea decided to end a protracted dispute with Japan over grievances related to Tokyo's brutal rule of Korea from 1910 to 1945. China's foreign policy assertiveness and increasing military spending are among the drivers of South Korea and Japan strategically improving relations, said Leif Erik Easley, an associate professor of international studies at Ua Women's University Seoul. The Yoon administration's new agreement with Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's Japanese government shows a desire to advance reconciliation and ensure that crucial cooperation for regional security is not held hostage by the past. He continued, in the interest of trilateral efforts to address the challenges North Korea and China presented, Washington supports its friends in Asia. but a crucial issue is whether Seoul's and Tokyo's leaders can finish domestic political assignments to make global coordination sustainable. Taiwan experiences worry due to hegemonic China. Taiwan, which China claims as its territory and has sworn to annex, has expressed concern over Beijing's growing military prowess. As a result of Beijing's increasingly assertive military actions in the Taiwan Strait, senior American officials have repeatedly cautioned that China may invade the democratically self-governed island in the years to come. The analyst Su claims that Taiwan's finances will be heavily impacted by China's 2023 military expenditure, which will be more than 11 times greater than Taiwan's. However, he noted, China's defense forces will be more dispersed given that it has 5 combat zones. Even U.S. officials have urged Taipei to embrace asymmetric warfare, as he urged Taiwan to do. Taiwan will have a high chance of offsetting China's numerical advantage in its ammunition and military personnel if it prioritizes investment in anti-ship and air defense missiles, Su emphasized. Enhancing U.S. security partnerships. In recent months, tensions have also increased between China and the Philippines. A Chinese vessel allegedly used a military-grade laser against a Philippine patrol boat in the disputed seas in one of the many complaints the Philippines has lodged against China's actions in the South China Sea. While the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Brunei all have overlapping claims to various portions of the sea, China asserts almost total control over it. The President of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., has pledged that his nation will not lose 1 inch of land. His government has strengthened the military partnership between Manila and Washington by allowing U.S. troops access to 4 more military bases in Southeast Asia and resuming joint patrols in the South China Sea. According to expert Su, regional nations may consider establishing something akin to a maritime NATO in response to China's increasing assertiveness and aggression. The U.S. dominates security cooperation in the Indo-Pacific area. In recent months, Washington has strengthened bilateral military ties with nations like Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines, he pointed out. These are significant initiatives to stabilize the balance of power in the area and halt China's naval power growth.